Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. My name is Jack, and I'm here with my pal Daniel.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everybody else.
Hi. Yeah, we're continuing a little fun time from last week where we were doing some questions and answers. And last week, Daniel, we got into some good questions from viewers. And one of them, what is a cult? Right?
Yeah, that was a good one. I love that one.
That was a great one. And then the other was, what are you worshiping? And I feel like these really spurred on a lot of fun discussions. So we're just going to kind of keep going with the Q&A.
I still have my bowl of questions right here.
Excellent. I've got my slips of paper right here. Just
I was thinking, Jack, I had this like deep intention after last week. I was like, all right, this time I'm going to learn how to do origami and I'm going to redo my papers so that they're like neat little origami things, right? But yeah, but I didn't make it, so I still have these crumpled up pieces of paper. It's its own kind of origami.
It's an origami geode.
There we go. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, very simple, simple origami.
How are you? It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Yeah, I'm doing well. My mood is somewhat lifting. And that's just kind of the way things go. We're on this really roller coaster like journey. But yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, a little bit of, I've had not so much like ordinary life, but just like my meditation practice has been a little bit roller coastery leading up to last week. But what is so nice is like I'm in that, like, I don't know, like I'm climbing up, I'm going back up or whatever. I'm in the fun part of the roller coaster again, where like where I'm like, oh, wow, I'm back into the swing, like I hadn't been able to make it to the temple or to any of the online practices in quite some time. And like, for me, like it had been this regular part of my routine. Like I go to the temple like a few times a week and maybe make a few of the online practices. And that whole routine just got completely disrupted for a variety of reasons. But like in the last week, I've been able to go to the temple a couple of times and meditate with my friends there. And I've been able to do the same online. And also my own personal practice is nice and consistent again, and it's like, it's developing, and yeah, like it's exciting. Like I don't want to get too attached. I know, like we're not looking for any particular thing in meditation, right? But yeah, like it's really nice. It's a pleasant place to be.
Well, it feels good when there's like momentum and you can kind of see when things are shifting in some way or feel like, oh, I'm kind of onto something, know?
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. So I know that. And I think that's actually, while we don't want to, we don't want to attach to it strongly so that we're like, okay, now it has to be like this. And if it's not, then something's going wrong. Like, of course, we don't want to go there. But I think really to enjoy those moments, I think makes a lot of sense because it helps us. It's motivating, right? It helps us kind of, just see like that things are changing and that change is possible. And that our nature really is blissful and we can return to it.
Yeah. And the thing that I like want to credit the most for this most recent sort of upward sort of buoyancy or whatever you want to call it, is that I really did I tried to follow some simple advice that Lama had given me when I was feeling kind of discouraged about my personal practice being really off and just not feeling motivated and not feeling into it. And I was like, I'm giving up, I'm not doing this. And, if I can't do it right, I'm not doing it and whatever, some BS like that. And he just, gently encouraged me to not stop and just to maintain consistency, regardless of whatever was going on and regardless of what I thought about it or felt about it or anything. And that really helped. It helped a lot. It was encouraging, like deep down inside, I think I knew that already. but it's good to hear it from somebody else. And it was good to see that the application of that advice yielded really positive results, and like you said, like it's good to be, there's nothing wrong with being happy about our practice. Like that's good, right? Like it's just the attachment to it. Like it doesn't have to be like this forever, but I'm aware that it is like this now, and that's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and to just kind of roll with it. Yeah, I had Darshan with Lama last week. That's kind of where you get together with your teacher, you talk about some of the stuff that's going on in your life and in your practice. And so, I'd shared that I've been struggling with some depression, and yeah, it was that kind of recognition that there's nothing wrong with any of the states of mind that we're experiencing. They're just states of mind. And so if I can recognize that, then the depression has less of a hold, and it has less of a potential to become those delusional thoughts that depression can lead to, which is that, like I'm a failure, or like I'm never gonna get out of this, or this is too hard, like I can't do it, those kind of which was really helpful for him to label those thoughts as like, that's delusional, because actually our nature is that things are changing all the time. Things are impermanent. So saying things like I can never change, it's just not true. It's just factually not true. So that was really helpful. And I think it has allowed me a little bit more like curiosity around my depressive states of mind, and just kind of states of mind in general, where it's like, oh, I'm kind of like, a couple of days ago I started noticing this like upswing of my energy. And I was like, whoa, okay, that, even though it feels good, is also not permanent, and I'm just gonna ride it, just pull it out. And so yeah, it's felt a little bit special. It's felt good the last couple of days to just recognize that.
Right. Good. It sounds like we're both in the saddle and ready to ride.
Ready. Well, if we're ready to ride, how about we get started with some questions?
I like it. I noticed so there are a few people listening on Zoom right now, and I just wanted to point out, I believe that there's a chat button. It looks like there's a chat button. There's one on my end. If there's one on your end, feel free to use the chat button to pipe in with your own questions and answers if you'd like.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, and for those of you joining on Facebook, we don't currently have a way to take your comments or questions, but we're considering how to do that in the future. So be on the lookout for that. But for now, what do you think, Daniel? You want to start?
Yeah, you went first last time with a home run question. So I'm just gonna can I go first?
Please, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Oh, okay. Here's a common one. So I've heard this question, I'm sure you have too. Is it a religion, a philosophy, or a way of life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, next question. All right. Okay, moving right on.
But and that's so funny. It's funny, right? Because what brought me in was that I didn't want to be involved in a religion, but I wanted something that was like a structured, path. And so it felt like, okay, I've heard people call Buddhism, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life, it's not a religion. And so that drew me in. But at least with the practice and training that I'm doing with the temple, it is religious. It's, and I don't exactly know, I feel like the definition of religion or spirituality or philosophy can be, these categories that don't, at the end of the day, sometimes they're very crossover, they blend. But there is an element of actually what we talked about last week of worship and dedication, And yeah, commitment to a set of ethical principles that really feels like, okay, yes, this is religious. Um, but it definitely feels different from religion that I grew up in that I'm not being told that there's someone else controlling my fate, and you know, uh that they're kind of the all encompassing all everything. um it's very different. And so Buddhism is this kind of incredible um philosophical way to approach our lives, where I am actually, I'm in the driver's seat. Like, I'm the one who has to take action in order for my life to change. It's not going to come from divine intervention.
You seem like that. You seem to think that that's good news. I for a long time have felt like that was really bad news. But I'm changing. I'm coming to see the light.
Yeah. So you want that kind of like the divine intervention, or like the kind of blowout experience, would you say?
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah. I'm there with you.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, it's good to know ourselves. Be honest with that. Yeah. What do you think? I want to hear from you too.
Yeah, well, I thought something that you said kind of prompted a thought on my end, which is like the religions that I'm accustomed to. First of all, they're theistic, right? Like, and this is a non-theistic type of a religion, if you want to call it a religion, which I would. I agree with you. Certainly, the practices that we do. I know a number of people that might call themselves Buddhists, or like aligned with Buddhism, but not necessarily consider themselves religious. So it probably is up to the individual and whatever system they're in and how they want to think about it. But the thing that I noticed beyond just the sort of like the question of God, or that kind of thing, I think that there's also this, like at least in my experience, the religion that I have experience with was one that told me how things were. So it purported that that the actual, like, what was being taught there was the actually the way things are. Like, that's it, right? You read this, and then you, despite what your brain tells you, you make it believe the same thing, because it's really important that you believe it, because that's the truth and that's how it is. They're explaining it to you. And what is nice about Buddhism to me is that I never get the impression from anyone that they're telling me exactly how things are, but rather are providing me with ways of looking at things to see how they are for myself. And so in that sense, I can sort of, it's like teachings that really like a practice that helps me to see things more clearly, the way things actually are, rather than the way that I might believe them to be or think them to be. And I think that that's really like super valuable. And the other thing, like as far as the question about whether it's a philosophy, I mean, obviously, philosophy is it's the love of wisdom, right? And so, like we talked about last week, if this is a religion, it's a religion that worships, wisdom and compassion, and those qualities. And so, of course, it's a love of wisdom as well. It's philosophical, and because it's a way of guiding us, it obviously affects our life and becomes a way of living. I mean, if you put on a pair of glasses that take you from barely having any vision to having 20/20 vision, your way of life is different now, right? As a result of that. And I feel like it's the same way here, right? Like, out of necessity, I see things differently, and therefore my life, the way I'm being in this world, is quite different as a result.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's a way of seeing our direct experience more clearly. And yeah, like putting on those glasses of like, okay, I'm getting more clarity onto what this actually is.
Though, I think I made a mistake there. I don't want to, I think it's actually the other way around in my experience. So, like, it's like I had some glasses on that were covered in crap. right? Or they were really like, they were the wrong prescription. I don't even need glasses, but I was wearing glasses and they had scratches and they had all kinds of mud on them and I couldn't see. And Buddhism is sort of like very gently being like, hey, you don't need that.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Lama says a lot that, that the practices that we're doing are about connecting into our direct lived experience. So that really feels empowering because, again, it's coming from us. And while we're getting, support, we're being taught, we need teaching. We have to apply it. We have to do it. And that feels also very different from religions that I've experienced before. And something else that you said made me think of how it's really interesting that there is like hierarchy within Tibetan Buddhism, but it's not about power over in the same sense that I experienced with Christianity, where there's kind of like what you said about, maybe there's thoughts that I have that are contradicting with what my religion is saying, but I'm told that, well, you just got to kind of fall in line because that's the truth, and avoid critical thinking.
Yeah.
But that's very much not what I've experienced in practicing Buddhism. Even though there is this really strong tradition of hierarchy in terms of meeting with teachers who are qualified, and I think that's just practical, honestly. It's not about like one person having more power than the other. It's just practically, we really need to be able to do these trainings, to have someone who's done it and has a lot of experience in it, and who has received the teachings from people who also knew that. It's a lineage, right?
Yeah.
Lineage tradition. Yeah.
That's what I kind of think of it like when I think of our lineage or lineages, I think of like streams, and so like the hierarchy of a stream is such that the water that's upstream above the, in the waterfall, it's just there. It's higher. It's it comes earlier. It has these certain qualities that create the hierarchy, right? And but it's just because it happens like time and place, right? Like that person spent more time, applied themselves more, had certain causes and conditions or whatever that allowed them to sort of I don't know the right way to accumulate sort of the water, to sort of like, I don't know, channel it. I don't know another way to put it using that metaphor, but I think that like in those cases, there's this recognition. It's not, like what I've seen anyway with my own limited experiences with the sort of hierarchy within our practice, is that it really doesn't, it seems like it's based upon the quality of the teacher, like actually like the quality of the teachings themselves, like how well they're able to help students or other people sort of see, right? To see clearly. Right. And so like that makes sense, right? Like there's somebody who's like a master craftsman and I've never built a house. Like, of course, there's like a natural hierarchy there. They know things I don't know. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that really eased a lot of my anxiety going into the temple and actually starting to do more intense practices and training and reading and whatnot. Because I definitely have, I'm an anti-authoritarian, and so and that hasn't changed since becoming a Buddhist,
right?
And but it's because I, going into the temple and learning about that exact thing, like the natural hierarchy, in the same way that I wouldn't want like a first year like neurology student to do my brain surgery. I would want, experienced neurosurgeon to do it. And so it's not about this kind of imposed power dynamic. It's very
not only is it not imposed, but in the book, the Guru Principle, which talks about all the what teachers or teachings, what it means really, right? One of the things that they brought up in there about this hierarchy, about its sort of natural establishment, is that it's all sort of like kind of like word of mouth, if you will. They call it the yogi network, or I think that's what they called it, right?
Yeah.
The yogi network, where it's sort of like people just know, like, is this person good or not? It's all direct experience, right? And so somebody can come along who may be considered a reincarnation, and they might have all kinds of whatever degrees or greater things to their accomplishments, whatever, but if they can't sort of convince the people that they're teaching that their teachings are worthwhile, there's no power dynamic there at play, right?
Right.
You can't, they're not going to be able to like force it. Yeah,
right.
Anyway.
Right. Interesting stuff. Yeah. What do you think? Should we move on to question 2?
Oh yeah, what you got?
All right, let's see. Can a teacher read my mind and recognize my bad habits, darkness, past bad deeds, kinks, etc.?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that, Jack.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm gonna blush if Llama can read all that. No, I don't know. I would say that I don't have a lot of experience here, so I can't speak to it a lot. But my sense is that it's not so much like a reading, so much as a relating to. So our teachers are intimately human, and based upon the idea, or at least the concept of reincarnation, they've been human for a long, long time and been doing all kinds of human things for a long time. They have killed, they have fornicated, they have, done all kinds of stuff. And sometimes they've done that in this life, and sometimes maybe they've done it in previous lives. Regardless, they have a deep, at least my experience, a deep understanding of the human condition, and so can relate really easily to what's going on. And I don't know, I kind of, my sense is that, at least my experience with Lama is that I don't think that he has to know my intimate little like kinks and weird idiosyncrasies and my dark, dirty secrets and stuff. He just knows I have them because everybody has them. Everybody's working with that, right? And even though the forms are different, the way that it manifests is unique in each person. I think that it's a pattern, like there are patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, ways of, and so in that sense, like I think they can, read you, like a book. You know what I mean? Like the more accomplished, right? The higher up, the longer they've been doing it, probably the easier it is for them to see like what you're struggling with and how to overcome it, what to work with. But I think it's based upon their own human nature, and their own work on trying to improve that and free themselves.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, just how highly attuned one can become, through all of these meditation practices. I have had moments, I've had moments with Lama where it's been like, it felt like he kind of read my mind.
Oh yeah. I bet you everybody in the Sangha has had that, Jack.
Yeah. Like there was this one time that I had a darshan with Lama, and the night before I had watched a movie with my roommate called Fantastic Fungi. I don't know if you've seen it. Right. It's a really excellent movie about mushrooms. And they touch on magic mushrooms and psilocybin and like the studies that are being done on how beneficial it can be for like PTSD and all these other things. And after the movie, like me and my roommate were like, oh, like kind of want to do some mushrooms sometime. Like, oh, I kind of miss it,
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was just like, I know that this is going to come up somehow in darshan tomorrow. And sure enough, the next day, Lama and I we were walking outside in the park and talking about my practice, my training and whatnot. And I think I had mentioned that, shamatha was just really feeling like kind of a drag. Like it was just oof, you know, it's a hard meditation just to put your focus single pointedly on your breath or an image or whatever. It's freaking hard. Um, and he said, you know, if you're doing shamatha right, you wouldn't want to do drugs. And it was just such a moment of like, yeah, I want to do drugs. I still want to do drugs. I think about drugs, you know, like just like this mind of like, yeah, wanting to escape, wanting to get out of my doldrum reality, wanting to have that blowout experience where I could like feel inspired and like to continue going, like, oh, everything's, you know, come together. But that it turns out, you know, we, through our meditation practice, you know, can really develop that ability to be in bliss and total connection with our world and our surroundings and ourselves through just our own experience.
Right.
And of course, an incredible amount of effort.
And if you succeed at being intimately connected to your inner and outer worlds, and you have the motivation, you know, to benefit other beings, then I think that particular combination would allow you to perceive things that would seem almost like omniscience, right? Like that type of, like, you can see sort of into a person, right? Like, so like, I don't know that I don't doubt the possibility of some type of super ordinary or whatever abilities in terms of, you know, recognizing other people's mental states or emotional states. But I think that, like, really, you know, being connected and having that desire to help those two things together go a long way to making a person feel like you really see them and see right through them, you know?
Yeah. Most definitely.
You know, I think it's funny though, that thing that you said about Lama, like it's true. I've had it too. It's just like a lot of times, right? More times than I can count. The one time that I thought was kind of funny, I was doing the sound stuff at the temple, and the sound booth itself. So like, normally when you're sitting at the normal level in the sound booth, you're at the same level as Lama, which is, you know, so you're equal, like in terms of height. And that feels like, okay, it feels all right. But I had put, like, there was a seat up one level higher, right? And because I'm kind of short or whatever, I'd sat up there because I really wanted to see, you know? And so as I was sitting up there, I was all comfortable with my decision, but then I started to feel really uncomfortable that I was higher than Lama, right? Like I started, like my mind just started like doing these weird, and then I was like, no, you can't now if you go and act on it and go sit down there, you know, then you're even more delusional and you're even more sort of, you know, and I'm having this whole internal, like, I'm just sort of like, I'm kind of, like, I don't know why, it wasn't a big deal, but I was kind of flipping out. And he says, he's sitting there on the stage in the middle of a talk, and then he's like, you know, and actually, so the reason why lamas sit like this, you know, it's not a hierarchy thing. And he goes, he takes a minute to, in the middle of his talk, to explain why he's seated up higher or whatever.
Oh.
And I'm just like, wait, what just happened? How did he know? Like that, because it wasn't part of it. It didn't fit with the talk, right? Like, and so like, here I am, I'm having this like mental agitation or whatever. He's just like, oh, hey, chill, Dan.
Yeah. That's really sweet.
Isn't it?
And hilarious.
Right? And that's, I mean, like, that's odd to me. And yet I think it's two things. On the one hand, it's incredible sort of sensitivity and compassion of his, you know, his own. And then I think that there's also like this sort of, it makes me sort of, you know, like the stories they say, you know, when a Buddha talks, everybody hears what they need to hear, you know, something to that effect, right? They're able to speak to all beings at their level. And even in a large audience with many people, a lot of times people have a very, you know, like a personal sort of like that, they were talking to me, you know. I think it's like something like that. Like I'm starting to get like a little glimpse of that.
Yeah, it's really precious.
It is
really, really precious.
Yeah, and I don't want to, you know, like, how it came to be, is it truly omniscience? Lama, I think, has said he's not omniscient. I think he said anyway. Regardless how it works and whether it's through intense sensitivity or whatever, the point is that they definitely are able to see you, right?
Yeah.
See you quite clearly as like the person that you are with all your faults and all your, everything. And it's a vulnerable position to be in. So hopefully you trust your.
Yeah, you definitely want to trust your teacher. And I think also, at least it's been my experience over the last few years, is that I'm learning how to trust myself too more within relationship to a teacher.
Yeah.
Because I used to be pretty cagey when I would like go into, darshan appointments with Lama. And I would have like a list of things I wanted to talk about, like very structured. And he's really good at being intimate, even when there's like barriers that I think I'm throwing up.
He doesn't break them down unnecessarily.
Right. No, it's just safety. I feel safe, and so it's almost like I'm trusting myself to put down some of those barriers because I feel safe in that dynamic. And that is really, so healing, right? To be able to do that. And so, yeah, the student-teacher relationship is, I feel, the main thing for me in Buddhism. It's just being able to have that deep connection and intimacy with someone far on the path. It feels like this lifeline that's been thrown out to me that I didn't even know that I needed, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just an enormous blessing. And I think especially at Lion's Roar, like, I don't know how other sanghas work, but from what I've heard, like, it's actually pretty unusual to be able to have this close of a connection with a teacher. Whether you're like a student who visits him in darshan frequently, or even just like a lay person, like who's not a student yet, we have a lot of like close connection with Lama, and apparently that's not very common. And so it's just like, wow, when you think of that metaphor of finding like a precious gem and like being a blind beggar in a pile of trash, finding a precious gem, it really feels like that. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, and what you said about, that our relationship with our teacher is of paramount importance. I was thinking about it earlier today. I was just sort of like, like the idea of taking, the idea of taking refuge in the Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It was sort of like that stream analogy that I was just talking about. Like, I recognize actually that my connection to my Buddha nature, or awareness that it even exists, whatever you want to call that, like whatever that connection is, the Dharma that teaches me how to develop that connection, and the Sangha that helps me to support me, in working on that. All of that is only possible because of my teacher, right? Like, I wouldn't have access or even awareness of my Buddha nature. I wouldn't have the Dharma available to me. Not me, I'm just talking about me personally, other people perhaps. But in my personal case, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, all of them are derived from Lama.
Yeah.
Right? In a sense, like in my experience, it all flows from this one place.
Oh yeah, thinking about my experience too, and I know that we have similar kind of like entry points into the temple and whatnot, where like I started out at just beginner meditation because I wanted to try out meditation but didn't want to do it alone, and so I it was just a self-help thing, like a self-improvement thing, and which is great, that's important, that's really good to do, but I had no idea that I was going to like actively join a religion.
Right.
You know, like, and it was because that, yeah, if you don't mind me sharing a story, after like joining maybe a couple beginner meditation classes, I was like, okay, this place, there's something going on here. It's cool. I want to learn more. And so I started going to more of like the weekday practices and the weekend discussions. And there was a 1 day medicine Buddha retreat. And I show up and there's maybe like 4 or 5 other students, and then Lama giving this full day retreat, which I'm pretty sure I paid nothing for, right? Like I just
Right.
showed up and was like,
Yeah.
hey everybody, I'm this like random person. And I was able to talk to him during the lunch break. And it was very clear to me that this person was so intentional and genuine about what they were doing, and that you know, his words matched his action. It was clear to me from the start, you know. And yeah, there were many other little moments like that that kind of cascaded into like, okay, this feels like a real thing. I didn't even know that I was looking for the real thing, but you know,
Yeah.
this feels great. And you know, little moments of just like, you know, there was one time that I was in his office and I was really distraught because I was having a lot of like identity related issues, you know, sadness around like my mom not really accepting my queer identity and whatnot. And through the middle of like tears and his presence, I remember looking up, and the first book that I see on his shelf was Queer Dharma. And it was just like, it was just one of those magical moments where it's like, it was just all there. And it was like that safety of being myself. And yeah, how wonderful, right?
all the indicators of a safe and healing environment were there.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. No, man. We have the same entry point. But I used to, for years, people would like we'd be, you know, just doing regular meditation or whatever, and then somebody would be sharing and they would talk about darshan with Lama, or Lama this and Lama that and Lama whatever. And I was just like, I was, oh man, I'd go home and I'd tell my girlfriend, I'm like, these people, like, I love meditating with them, but they just Lama, you know, and I'm like, I don't even know who he is, but I don't trust it. Like, it can't be, like, that can't be okay, right? Like, I had all kinds, like, it's a cult, right? I had all that, like for years. Like, I still love meditating with the group, right? And I sort of was like, whatever, I'm just gonna leave this whole Lama thing, like, I'm just gonna leave it, you know, like on the side, right? I don't really need that.
Yeah, compartmentalize.
Lo and behold, you know, like, I actually think, to me, pardon me, I don't mean to be, I hope this isn't in any way offensive or anything, but I kind of feel like Lama or Buddhism or the temple, or however you want to call it, for me is like a black hole, right? And it has and it's pulling, right? And there's things that are really far away that are still drawn to it, but they don't come in as fast, right? But like what happened with you and I was we were circling, and then we passed that event horizon. You know, the one where, like, once you pass that little line, you're going in. Yeah. Right? Like, no matter what you're going, there's no turning back. You're just getting sucked right in. Yeah. And I feel like I really, like, I could feel myself like getting closer and closer. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? You know, and just like a black hole, the person becomes sort of spaghettified, right? Like, right? Like same thing for me. Like, I totally got spaghettified. I still maybe am spaghettified, you know, like, as I'm, you know, getting pulled closer and closer in. That's just like how I can't help but feel like there's this incredible magnetic, like, pull, right? And I kind of, it's an odd thing, because even in my sort of most like dark, like not connected, lack of faith sort of moments, I still had this feeling like I can't help it. Like I'm going in, like I'm already past that point. Like there's nothing I can do now. I'm going in, right? It's just a question of like how long it's going to take and how I'm going to enjoy that ride.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that even though, like, yes, I had a lot of safety and like the feeling of, yeah, this thing is real, whatever it is. I did put up resistance in terms of like thinking, is this a freaking cult? And, up until, I mean, even now, like I struggle with ideas around like nonviolence and things like that, where it's like there might be a way that I live in my everyday world where it's like I have different ideas about how the world works. But then, when I take it to, my Dharma meditation world, and it's like there's conflict between the two of them often, right? And I think that's really rich ground, actually.
It's the best,
right?
Like, it's the best. Whenever you detect that resistance, the good stuff is right on the other side.
There, yeah, because that tension is where we start to notice the self too, right? Start to notice like, oh, I'm really holding on to this idea. Like, why am I holding on to this idea so much? Yeah, it's just really, really interesting stuff. And actually, what I've come to see is that, Dharma has really helped me hold multiple truths at once. So like for this example of like nonviolence, where I felt like, okay, if they're saying that I should be nonviolent in situations where like I'm in threat of harm or like whatever, I had this kind of delusion that that's what nonviolence meant. But actually what I've come to realize is that Buddhists are just very practical, or like the Dharma is very practical. And so of course we wouldn't allow or want harm to happen to us, but is the way that I respond to people in my everyday life violent? And I had to start looking at, how am I aggressive in my everyday life? And so starting to break down, it's not about this kind of like out there notion that like, if I'm if someone's coming down the street and like, wanting to beat me up, like, no, of course I'm not going to be nonviolent. If I can't get out of the situation, I'm going to defend myself. Like that's silly to think otherwise. But really it's about like uncovering, how am I doing this actually in my everyday life? Turns out like I can be a real jerk. Like I can be real rude and not very kind to people. So that's like the violence that actually I was uncovering. So yeah, it's like, it's also such a practical philosophy. It's really upended my life.
Absolutely. And I like that, like you said, like actually there's no, it is practical and it's ultimately for our own good, whatever ethical recommendations or suggestions are made. But that, like I've heard examples or stories that that I thought were really clever in the sense that they like where they, violence, there was violence and it was justifiable. In the sense that they were helping the other person to avoid increasing their negative karma, right? Like I read some stories about monks that fought in Tibet, right? Fought against the Chinese.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, right? Like hearing about that and being like, wow, actually they, took up arms, right?
They resisted, yeah.
They resisted but they took great pains to still exercise compassion in those moments and to avoid unnecessary violence and unnecessary killing. It was really quite beautiful to see because I don't think that there is any clear-cut right and wrong that's sort of prescribed, right? Like I think that it is ultimately, it's going to be up to us to decide how we're going to be in this world. And there are perhaps times where violence might be justifiable. I think for the most part, it's not. And like you said, like a deep examination of the self is first happens first, right? It needs to come first. Otherwise, the self is sort of a violent thing anyway, right? Like it's sort of on its own because it's a delusion that needs to defend itself. And so it's sort of an aggressive, violent delusion to begin with. And I don't mean like it's like everybody, everybody's egos are violent, but just like that very notion, there's a me and there's a you and there's a right and a wrong and all of that kind of stuff. It just sort of creates lots of occasions for what looks like reasons to become violent, right? But in so many cases, that's just not how it is, right? And it's not needed.
Right. Yeah. This is I love it. I love it.
Okay. I cherry picked this one. I opened it up while you were talking.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I didn't randomly. This is not a random slip, right?
Okay, go for it.
This is direct to your last comments, Jac. Aren't Buddhists all about love and peace? Isn't it just another use of religion to placate, pacify, neutralize, and gain conformity? Isn't it just more opium for the people, for the masses?
I struggle with that one a lot. That's one that I've really had to work with. Because I do think sometimes like, what am I doing just sitting here? What am I doing meditating? Like, is it really doing anything? And if I'm asking other people to do this, how is that changing their world? And is it changing, social systems and structures and oppression that needs to, be changed? And I don't have like a clear-cut answer other than that. What I've noticed in myself is that with this practice, I've come to recognize the incredible responsibility that I now feel towards others. Whereas before starting this practice, I think I was a pretty selfish person. And really just trying to get attention, get pleasure, have a good reputation. And I was doing that through activism, which is funny, right? Because what we're talking about, this question is like, is this actually just, placating the masses and keeping people down? But actually what's happened is that I've come to experience my life, my lived experience so much more deeply and feel my suffering so much more deeply and have compassion for it and others suffering. That actually now I just feel so much more in touch with what we're all going through. And so I would say that it's allowed me to move with those kind of larger structural, cultural, social problems in a way that no longer, well, sometimes still, but doesn't destroy me. Because that's what it was doing. Like, I was so intensely just angry and disturbed all the time. I drank heavily for a while, to cope with that and all other kinds of behaviors. And that wasn't doing anything to help anyone. And now, like I'm more patient. I can listen to people better, people who are actually struggling and suffering and marginalized. I'm listening to what their needs are better. And I'm not getting as burnout. I still get burnout, you know, but it's not the type of burnout that I used to experience. And I think we're going to need that. If we're going to change anything about this relative world that we're living in right now and the cultural problems that we're having, we cannot get burnt out. We have to be stable and grounded, and really genuinely listening to each other. I know that sounds cliche, and can be annoying because sometimes I hear the word like, oh, we just need to have dialogue and talk with each other. And I'm just like, no, the other people need to shut up and stop treating people poorly, right? But I do think that deep listening is going to be a huge key. So yeah, I'm kind of going, I feel like I'm going off the rails here, but it's something that I really care about. And so yeah, I'm wondering, as you were looking at that question, what kind of what made you want to pick that one, and what do you think about it?
Why did I want to pick it? I felt like it riffed right off of what we were talking about. One of the things that I like, on the one hand, if this were just another tool used by society to whatever, what is it saying? Give the people bread or what is it? Cake and circuses
Bread,
or something like that,
bread and
right?
roses.
What is it?
I said bread and roses. That's a socialist thing. But
Yeah, but basically, like, to me, like, the whole idea of like the opium of the masses and whatnot, that religion sort of like it sort of it fills a need, right? Like it's like it does something to make people sort of stop trying. I don't know how to explain that. It's like hope for a future, like give like
right.
there's a word for it nowadays that somebody coined that I love, is hopium. Opium. Like, oh, there's hope for something in the future, right? And therefore, if only I do these things right now, then I'll get it later. And it's okay, I can tolerate being miserable right now and being oppressed and taken advantage of and all that, because something in the future. And I would just say, like, on the one hand, there is a part of me that, like, I recognize, for example, that the Chinese government would love very much nothing more than to take over, Tibetan religious society, if you will, because probably they can see the value in a religion that appears to be so peaceful, right? And the qualities that, at least, that people sort of sense about Buddhism appear to be like they could be rather helpful for subjugating the masses and to create to prevent a lot of civil unrest, perhaps. But my goodness, if what they're promoting in order to accomplish that is what I've been learning and what you've been learning, then first of all, they don't know what they're doing. They're not going to get what they want. They're going to get the exact opposite. So, like, if in fact Buddhism somehow got co-opted, if you will, which I don't doubt that plenty of entities and organizations are have already and will continue to try to co-opt it. There's no doubt about that. That's just the nature of things. But if what it is this, like, if what they're doing is promoting teachings and a way of life and a religion like what we've just been discussing, my goodness, like, yes, please bring it on. I would love to live in a world where the governments are pushing this kind of propaganda, and encouraging people to, wake up and love each other and be compassionate and understanding and all of that. If that's what government was doing, if that's what it was using all of its time and money, was to try to get the population to be like that for their own nefarious purposes, I'm down. I'm fine with that.
Well, Buddhism is anti-fascism. We'll put it that way. Buddhism is anti-fascism because you cannot have dominance and control in these types of practices, in these trainings. What we're doing is we're dissolving that need. We do not need to have power or control over other beings. What we want is actually to be deeply connected to them and support each other in realizing just how freaking fantastic we all are.
Right.
So Buddhism is anti-fascism. And so maybe that's one reason why governments aren't promoting it. But
wait. Are you trying to say that Buddhists are Antifa?
maybe.
No, it's true. It totally is. Absolutely. You know, and like the fact that two people who at least are anarchists at heart, right? Like I think maybe you're a little bit more anarchist in practice, but deep down inside, there's like I'm a closet anarchist. The fact that the two of us are drawn to these practices, this philosophy, this religion, this way of life, is sort of a clear indicator, right? Like that this is not an authoritarian, top-down, hierarchical sort of power dominance sort of play. That's not what's going on here whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, and while we also promote, peace and joy and love and whatnot, it doesn't just end there. It's about developing this kind of radical, like keen wisdom that's like sharp wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like there's the compassion and love and bliss on one side, and then there's this kind of like wrathful, like both wrathful and joyful and intense energy and wisdom on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not just like, ooh, peace and love and whatnot. It's like, no, we're getting to the heart of things, and we're gonna cut through your delusions now. So it's got that fire.
That's not something that I listen to a lot of reggae music, so they're always chanting down Babylon, the system of the system of things. And I just, this is not something that Babylon, so to speak, wants, right? Like like what we're doing here is sort of like anathema. Is that the right word? That's how you say it, anathema? Like it's the opposite of that.
Right. Yeah.
Is that how you say that word? How do you say that word?
Anathema?
Anathema, is that right? Yeah.
So I am losing what that means.
It's like the opposite, right? At least that's how I'm using it.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm using it.
Anathema too.
Yes.
Ooh,
Anathema
language is good.
Well, good. We're getting an opportunity to practice it.
Oh man, Daniel, this has been really fun.
It has. I'm also really grateful. Someone did give me a little correction on it was bread and circus, right? So whoever this is, said bread and roses was a call to arms at the beginning of the 20th century during the formation of the anarchist movement at the time, as a call for everyone having the right to food and beauty. Love it. I love it. Anarchists everywhere. The fact that someone even knows that, who's listening to us, I think we're all a bunch of anarchists.
Yeah, thanks, E. And this is I think this is really good. I feel energized. I feel positive, and I can't wait to read more questions with you next week.
Is that what we're gonna do? Yeah, all right.
Well,
I still have a bowl full.
I know, I've got like 6 or 7 little strips over here.
You could do this all month long.
All month long. October is Q&A month.
Heck yeah, I'm down. I'm ready to do some interviews too, though. I want to do a couple more interviews.
That sounds good. I like that.
Cool.
Nice.
Wow.
All right. Well, I guess it's time for bed.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. It's been so fun. And please come back. Please bring your questions. If you know me, you can also text me your questions. That works well. And Daniel, thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Jac. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to us and being with us. Bye-bye.